This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and I'm excited to share this new season of the podcast with you. With both fall and winter arriving in the Pacific Northwest, it's time to store the mobile recording studio. This season, we'll be switching things up and interviewing some of my favorite hikers that I follow on Instagram virtually. We're following a similar format to season 1, where the first part of the episode focuses on the guest and their hiking adventures, and we're still going to end each episode with a speed round of this or that questions, all related to hiking. We have an amazing guest on today's episode. His name is Casey, and you can follow him on Instagram at The Hiking Fool. I had a great time chatting with Casey on this episode. We learn about his favorite places along the Columbia River Gorge, backpacking trips in national forests, and his four-legged compadre, Watts. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Casey. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I have a really fun guest today. His name is Casey, or otherwise known as the Hiking Fool on Instagram. I'm really excited to talk to him about his hiking and backpacking experiences. Casey, thanks for joining us on the podcast. For any listeners that haven't had a chance to follow you yet, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Casey. Thanks for having me on, Ivan. It's great to be here. And a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Alaska, and I've been hiking pretty much since the day I was born. I was pretty much born on the trail. Always enjoyed it. Here in the last recent years, my family and I, my beautiful wife, we moved out here to the Pacific Northwest to Camas, Washington, where there's plenty of great hiking and views to be had. So that's what I do mostly, is hike around the Pacific Northwest and Oregon and Washington, and I try to make it out of state when I can and go see some of the rest of the country.
So Casey, one of the first questions I always like to ask my guests is how they got started hiking and backpacking, whether it's as a kid or later on in life as a teenager or adult. How was your experience getting into the hiking and backpacking world?
Sure. I'm pretty lucky. Born and raised in Alaska, so as a kid, there was always ample opportunity for outdoor adventure. So I first started hiking with my family, and specifically my dad, and he was the type of guy that would just pull over in blue jeans and tennis shoes and hike up a mountain even when he had his 4 or 5-year-old with him. So that's how I got my start hiking. But backpacking on my own as an adult, I started in my early 20s back home in Alaska, doing some trips up into the Kenai Mountains and the Chugach Range. And then when we moved down here to Washington is when I really started ramping up my backpacking trips and hiking, and, backpacking here in the Pacific Northwest and backpacking really all over the West Coast. So I've been fortunate in that aspect.
Nice. And yeah, you're based out of Southwest Washington, and it kind of provides you a great opportunity that maybe other people in Seattle or Eastern Washington don't really get the opportunity, but you can hike in both Washington and Oregon pretty much easily just because you're so close to one another. If you have an unexpected free day, where do you like to go hiking at?
Oh, you're right. I'm in the hiking hub. I'm so fortunate fortunate. But if I had an unexpected free day and I was going to grab my day pack and throw my boots on and grab old Watsy boy, I'm thinking we're going to go Hamilton Summit or Dog Mountain. Hamilton Summit's just good because it's a good grunt. There's some waterfalls along the way, and it's kind of neat to get up there, and you've got great views of the gorge. Dog Mountain, though, if I want to catch a good view of the gorge on a clear day, that'd probably be my second choice.
Yeah, I feel like I've yet to really scratch the surface of the Columbia Gorge on either side, just because there's so many hikes and waterfalls and summits. It's almost hard to choose where to go.
It's totally hard to choose where to go. You're saying there's so much here and so many great hikes that, it's not hard to find one. So that's a good thing.
And one thing that I really like about your content is you show a part of the state that tends to not get as much attention, and that's around Mount Adams and the Mount Adams Wilderness region. How'd you kind of get started in exploring that area, and what kind of keeps drawing you back?
Well, what originally drew me to the Mount Adams area is hiking Silver Star Mountain, which is just north of Camas. And from Silver Star Mountain, from that summit, you can see pretty much the entire northern Cascades from Rainier to St. Helens, Jefferson, and Mount Adams, and Mount Hood. So on a Christmas Eve clear day hike, I was up on top of Silver Star Mountain, and I looked over at Mount Adams, and I had just realized how close it was to me. And I was like, oh man, I got to go check that place out. I bet it's beautiful. That's really what piqued my interest. I had been mucking around and playing in the Mount Hood National Forest and hiking Tilly Jane and things like that. And so Mount Adams just really kind of expanded my hiking area and just the territory that I had to explore. So yeah, that's how I got into Mount Adams, and I'm sure glad that I did, because it's a beautiful mountain. I always talk about Mount Adams as it's uglier the closer you get, and it's beautiful the further away you get, and that's just because it's so wide. So when you get up to when you're up above the timberline on Mount Adams, it kind of just looks like a big hill, but you don't realize you're halfway up the side of a mountain. I think it's the second widest mountain in the range. And then of course the further away you get, especially if the sun's shining on it at sunset or sunrise, it's just a beautiful scene.
Oh, you hit it right on the nail, Casey, because from where I'm from, we get to see it from quite a bit of ways, and there's some sunsets that it rivals Mount Rainier's sunsets. But then, like, I've gone to, I'm not sure if it's called Trout Lake, but it's pretty close to Mount Adams. And the closer you get, it's almost like a different perspective. And I'm like, that's not the mountain that I'm seeing. So it's funny that you also saw that it does change depending on your distance, but then also which side you're seeing.
Right. And I've only ever hit it from the south side. So, have
you had a chance to hike on Mount Adams or summit it? Because I know a piece of the PCT goes through it.
Right. No, I haven't had a chance to summit it yet. I was going to try to do that last week, but I was a little advantageous in my approach. But I did spend some time on the PCT last summer hiking Stagman Ridge, and that was a great hike. I think it's a 12-mile loop hike that follows the PCT for a little bit. Of course, back to the trailhead. But no summit yet, but it's in the works.
Nice, right on. Yeah, I have a couple buddies that try to do it once a year, and it's always surprising to me that it could be done in a day to summit Mount Adams.
Right.
Early rise, but it's quite unique that you can do it in one single day. So another place, Casey, that kind of caught my attention, and it's something that I really enjoy learning about, is not necessarily national parks, but some of their surrounding preserves or forests. And one that caught my attention from your feed was the Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming. It had some amazing rocky landscapes, and the waterfall that you got a chance to visit looked equally amazing. How long of a hike was it to reach the CERT towers and the waterfall there? And how was that experience going through that national forest?
Oh man, don't be telling people my secret about national forests. Then everybody will show up to them. No, that place, it was just beautiful. It was like being on another planet. The Bridger-Teton National Forest is about 2 to 3 hours southeast of Jackson, Wyoming. So just, pretty close to the Grand Teton National Park. But yeah, that hike, it was a good one. That was I spent 3 nights out there with old Watsy boy. And on the first day, we didn't go too far because we were pretty tuckered out that day. But on the second day, we made it to Cirque Tower. And oh my gosh, anybody that's done that hike, in the Bridger Teton coming up over Texas Pass, and you just take that view in, and you can see it on my page. I think it's pinned to my profile where you can see the tower. It's just absolutely breathtaking. I mean, I had to sit down for a minute. So that first day was a grunt, and then I got some rest. And that second day coming over through Texas Pass and seeing the towers was definitely rewarding. And then after the towers, we hiked to a lake that was actually just near the base of the Cirque Tower. And I spent 2 days there because it was just so beautiful. I set up a camp. Watson and I hung out in the hammock, hiked up to the backside of Cirque Tower one day. There's tons of glacier lakes out there in the world, but this one was special because it was on the backside of Cirque Tower, and that's where that waterfall you were talking about is, which it's kind of crazy that landscape there is so rocky and like you're talking about, and so much shrubbery, and the water, it kind of spills out and over. It's not those big grandiose waterfalls that you see here in the Pacific Northwest. So it was almost like one big continuous waterfall that just kind of followed the topography of the line, seemingly so in some spots. But yeah, that was a beautiful place, beautiful trip, and I was really impressed with I didn't realize once I got back in there, the climbing scene, how popular it is for rock climbing.
Really?
And I'm pretty sure that's really what put it on the map, because here I thought I was pretty high up there with old Watts, and then I look up over my shoulder on the backside of the tower, and there's half a dozen rock climbers up there. And I'm like, man, I thought I was crazy. Look at these guys. But that was a great experience. But yeah, that was that was a pretty good grunt. That was a 24-mile hike. I spent a total of, like I said, 3 to 4 nights, and lots of ups and downs, but worth every step.
Yeah, it looked unbelievably gorgeous there. Casey, if you wanted to summit Cirque Tower or get near the top of it, is rock climbing the only option, or are you able to hit it from the back?
You can hit it from the back. That's what the guys that I talked to for a little bit up there said. You don't want to go too much further. If you're just a regular average Joe hiker like I am, you probably want to have some equipment in some parts, but I think it would be pretty manageable.
Oh, okay. Good to know. When you were camping and backpacking out there, did you see a lot of other hikers and backpackers, or was it a good isolated place?
It's funny you should say that, because, when we pulled into the parking lot, because, it was a 2 to 3 hour drive, like I was saying, outside of Jackson, Wyoming, and the last 20 miles of trip, you're on back dirt road in the middle of nowhere, right in this national forest, one lane road. But then you come to the parking lot, there had to have been like 300 vehicles there. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so crowded. But it's such a vast landscape, Ivan, and there's so many different trails to take that, I saw people, but it wasn't annoying. I'd probably see somebody every, mile or so, a group of 2 or 3 people, and they were friendly enough. But it's just so vast and large. You can definitely get lost back there if you want to.
Probably still not a fraction of the crowds that you would see at Grand Teton National Park.
Oh, no, yeah.
And another thing that caught my eye, and especially with your content, you're really showing underrated areas across the West and Southwest. And, one national park that I think doesn't get the same recognition as some of its other Southwestern counterparts is Great Basin National Park. And you also did a backpacking trip there, and you made it look just equally grandiose as the other ones. How was that trip, and what were some of the highlights of Great Basin National Park?
Oh man, I love that park. Yeah, some highlights from that trip. I'm running through them all in my head. There's so many. I guess I should back up and say in 2021, I was on a road trip to go visit my mom in Winnemucca, Nevada. So I pulled over, passing through, and I hiked Wheeler's Peak, which is, the popular hike there. If someone's going to go there for a day hike, and it's beautiful up there, you get up there and it's like a big cathedral of stone and boulder. So I had thought the same thing too. I was like, oh, the Great Basin, whatever. But I went there and I was like, oh, and this is great. I'm definitely going to have to come back. So I did some research. And just this last summer, I did the Baker's Lake Loop. And you can't be telling on me now, but you're not really supposed to have dogs in national parks, right? So Watson and I we had to take off in the middle of the night. So that was a little bit crazy. It seems to happen to us every once in a while. But yeah, I knew that I had to go back there. I got on AllTrails and I found this loop for backpacking, and it was just a great experience. It's just so diverse, Ivan, and so breathtaking. We took off early morning. We probably took off at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and so we caught the sunrise. We had probably gained about 1,500 feet of elevation, making our way to Baker's Loop, and just the diversity, like I was saying, of the mountains, and you've got what's seemingly like old growth forest you're walking through one minute, and the next minute you're walking through a boulder field, looking at all these landscapes around you that are just vastly different. It's mind-boggling. But Baker Lake Loop, that's a good one, and Baker Lake, where we camped out, was a pretty neat spot. It's kind of horseshoed up into the base of these mountains, like a lot of those alpine lakes are. But when you go off the trail, you can see where other backpackers had set up camps and things like that. So I think we were there in the middle of the week. We went back to look for a place to camp at the lake, and we got the pick of the litter for sure on the camping spots. That was a good one. It was tucked back in the boulders behind the trees, and I had the whole place to myself. So we set the hammock up in the tent, and we had ourselves a good time for sure.
Yes, your pictures, it almost made it seem like you were at a different state or national park, depending on where you were within Great Basin National Park. Because, the old growth forest surprised me to see that, but then the bouldering section, so many different diverse landscapes that it's definitely made it go higher in my list to visit.
It's the first place, I've seen old growth forest and then cacti. So you're hit it right on the head.
Really diverse, and I think it's not as crowded as Arches, Zion, and just the change of scenery. Definitely, you can spend a couple days there and see all the great things it has to offer. One place that I got a chance to visit for the first time this last year, Casey, was Lake Tahoe and its surrounding areas, and you got a chance to do some backpacking in the Desolation Wilderness. How was that experience, hiking and backpacking in the Desolation Wilderness, and did you come across any bears? Because I feel like a lot of people, when they do either the Lake Tahoe Rim Trail or Desolation Wilderness or its surrounding areas, they have a bear story.
Funny you should ask that. First, I'd like to say if you sing the Scare Bear song from my page, you'll never have an issue with bears. Especially if you have bad singing, because you'll scare them away. But no, the Desolation Wilderness, oh my gosh. Like you said, everybody has a bear story there. And this is another one of those hikes where Watts and I took off in the middle of the night and started hiking by headlamp. And I don't know if it was just paranoia or me having a little bit of, that night hike adrenaline rush in a brand new place. But I swear there was a bear growl that happened. And I'll tell you what, Watts and I, we looked at each other and we're like, man, let's just keep moving. We didn't hear it, but just like you would hear in a movie, just a bear off in the distance, just a big old growl. But we didn't actually see a bear, but it definitely made our hair stand a little bit.
Oh, definitely. What were some of the highlights of Desolation Wilderness going, deeper into the Sierras?
There's so many highlights of the Desolation Wilderness. First of all, that was a 40-mile trip, and that's definitely been the toughest and most rewarding trip that I've taken, backpacking trip. Highlights for me, I took I think they call it the 24 Lake Loop Trail, and you literally see 24 lakes. So anybody that hikes up in alpine country in the mountains, you can imagine, surrounded by forests, just what that looks like. And it's such a vast landscape. And there's parts of it where you can't see anything because you're down, in the trees and, below the ridge lines and whatnot. And then there's parts you get to and it seems like you could just see the entire world, and you can definitely, see Lake Tahoe off in the distance, and it's roly-poly hills with big mountains, just forests and bouldering hills. A lot of walking up steep rock, I guess is what you would call it, in some parts of the Desolation Wilderness. And there's parts during that hike where you're going to go, it seems like you're always losing elevation just to gain it on the other side of some sort of creek or lake and things like that. But no, the Desolation Wilderness, it's just a great time. The camping spots, backpacking spots there, because it is fairly popular. It's just right there off, Lake Tahoe, so it gets used. But, one thing that comes to mind, a story I'd like to share about the Desolation Wilderness, is you're going to be tired at the end of the day and you're going to want to find a good camp spot. And because it's so crowded at times, that can be hard. And the second night I was there, we had spent all day hiking, and we hiked to Clyde's Lake, which I think was essentially the waypoint for us. And you could see previous backpackers had set up about half a dozen, campsites. They put the rocks up and things like that. Well, those were all full by the time old Watsy boy and I showed up, and it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Just gotten dark. And, there's no more camp spots, things like that. But you always got to kind of dig back in the tree line or go back behind a little bit, because we didn't believe what we were told. And like, there's got to be a place to camp around this lake somewhere. So we kept going past the main campsites, and I found this killer campsite. It was about 200 yards away from where everyone else was at, all on this little peninsula that went out into the lake. And same thing, someone had been there before and set up the little wind wall and things like that. So that trip was amazing. Like I said, it was the toughest backpacking trip I've ever done, but one of the most rewarding.
And how many days and nights were you out there, Casey?
I did that one in 3 nights and made it in on the 4th day. It was a push, though, to do that. I was hiking pretty much sun up to sundown, and with one of those being like an 18-hour day. But it was so tough, but that's what made it so rewarding, were the views, all the awesome lakes. Yeah. Some of the people that I bumped into, all like-minded, had some great conversations on the trail. And so, it was a good time. And you mentioned the bear song, and that's one of my favorite recurring series on your page is the hiking full tips. And there's been a lot of good ones. And I imagine it's hard to pick your most favorite one, but what would you say, which hiking full tip has had the most impact for you personally? And then which tip got the most engagement from the online community? It's funny you should ask that. It's one and the same, Ivan, and that's wearing silk socks and applying baby powder to your feet and then your regular hiking socks. Yeah. That one, an old guy that hunted up in the Kenai Mountains when I was a kid taught me that trick. His name was Mike. He took me out hiking one time and I got blisters on my feet. I was probably in high school, young man anyways. And he told me that secret, wearing silk socks and putting baby powder on your feet. Man, I've been doing that ever since. And I try to tell everybody that I know to do that, especially if they complain about their feet getting blisters, because you won't get blisters. And if it's cold outside, you have yourself a pretty good base layer as well. So yeah, get yourself some silk socks for sure. Nice. Okay. So you put baby powder on your feet, then put on your silk socks, and then put on your hiking socks on top of those? Yep. Then you're set. You can hike all day and all night. Nice. Yeah, because I would say that's one of the hardest parts about long distance hiking is trying to avoid the blisters, and any way to avoid them can make a world of difference. So I'll definitely be trying the baby powder and silk socks myself this summer and see if I can avoid getting those hot spots and blisters. That's right. You'll thank me later. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know how it goes. Now, another thing that I really enjoy about your content is that you like to have a good time when you're on the trail, whether it's backpacking or day hikes. It's coming up with songs like the bear song, or one that really made me even laugh out loud was your own version of MTV Cribs at your campsite, and you did the little DJ sound effect. Yeah, that one. It's refreshing to see hiking content that's humorous, because I feel like that's something that isn't commonly seen in hiking. It's either, the very cinematic reels and content, but it's so good to see that you have such a great time in the outdoors. How'd you kind of get into that mindset when you're out hiking to just have a good time and do fun stuff? Man, I don't know if it's so much as just the mindset, Ivan, is that I'm just kind of a big goof, When I'm out there hiking and trying to have a good time, it's simply just kind of enjoying the moment and what I'm doing and letting the elateness of the atmosphere kind of put me in that mood to where I just feel like I can have a good time and have some fun, Definitely. And you could tell from your content, Casey, that you are thoroughly enjoying being out in the outdoors, no matter where you are, if it's in the Pacific Northwest or somewhere else. Thank you for sharing that content, because it's a great change of pace from a lot of the other content that you see. Is just seeing somebody that's having such a great time out in the outdoors. Thank you so much, Ivan. And I try to mix it up too, because like you said, it can be kind of cinematic, and so I got to try to get some fresh stuff out there to grab some attention. So that's a lot of times when I'm trying to goof off and coming up with the bear song, because there was some points. We'll go back to the bear song. That was in Bridger Teton, and I was actually more kind of bear aware on that hike than I was in Desolation Wilderness. That just came to me. I think I just listened to that song the night before, Crowded Houses, whatever song it is. And I was hiking through the forest there and decided that would be a great way to scare up the bears. So good stuff.
And would you say, Casey, it's been 100% effective, the bear song?
Oh, yes. Haven't seen one yet.
There you go.
Yet. It's either the terrible singing or just the noise, one and the same, I guess.
Now, we kind of touched upon it already, Casey, but the Columbia River Gorge is just gorgeous with hundreds of amazing hikes on each side of the Columbia. I don't want to ask you what your favorite hike is just because it's so diverse, but would you have a favorite hike for each season? You know, spring, summer, fall, winter that you like to do in the Columbia River Gorge?
Sure. For fall, I'm going to go back to either Cape Horn or Dog Mountain, which is on the Washington side, just because the colors are phenomenal. You can imagine just looking out over the gorge when everything is changing, and it's quite a scene. So that's going to be my fall hike. For winter in the gorge, it wouldn't be right in the gorge, but close enough in the Mount Hood National Forest, which is a pretty popular hike. A great waterfall is the Tamanawas Falls over on the Oregon side, just because it's, low base, Mount Hood National Forest, not too far away Hood, and it's a good trail with great views. And of course, once you make it to the actual waterfall and, the icicles plus the water coming over the rock's edge, it's just wonderful. I've done that before, and you can take the little ones with you. So that's a good one.
Nice.
The summertime, oh man, there's so much around here in the summertime. I'm going to say Hamilton Summit. I like Hamilton Summit because it's shaded and there's waterfalls along the way and also good views of the gorge. We're on to spring, which is coming up, by the way. I'm excited. The beginnings of real hiking season. In the spring, I'm going to say, you're throwing a rock at the king wherever you want to go. I don't have a specific one. You can't find a bad one in the spring around here, I don't think.
One of my favorite hikes, Casey, there in the Columbia River Gorge, and I did it before I moved, and I got a chance to redo it last summer, was Eagle Creek Trail. Have you had a chance to do that one?
Is that right outside of Cascade Locks? Or?
Yep, that's the one. It had been closed down for quite some time because of the wildfire that happened 7 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, we've done that one. That's a cool little hike. It was confusing to find the trailhead for me because that's right off the PCT2, and there's like one little parking area right by the Bridge of the Gods where the trail supposedly starts. That's right. But it's kind of hard to see off the road there. We ended up in some sort of, I think we were in like a private parking lot. We ended up finding the trailhead, but no, that's a great little hike with a neat waterfall.
And you mentioned them a few times on the episode already, but you have a special four-legged hiking compadre that joins you on a lot of your hikes. Can you share a little bit about Senor Watts? And he also pulls his own weight because he has his own pack. And what's his pack list look like nowadays?
Well, he's been bugging me to say hi all episode long. So can you say hi real quick? What's up, guys? It's me, Watts. Thanks for having us on. Thanks for scoping our page. Watts. Old Wattsy boy, my little knucklehead, my hiking compadre. He's awesome. I love having him with me. He goes with me pretty much everywhere I go, but especially on hiking trips, I keep him with me to keep me grounded. And, that's my real bear scare, or any predator scare, is having Watts with me, because I don't know if you've ever seen a dog out in the wild come across a bear or a cougar. They'll make all sorts of noise, which is what you want when you come across a bear or anything, right? But yeah, I got Watts. Watts is 16 months old, and I totally, just broke him in hiking as a pup. Actually, one of his first hikes was Tamanawas Falls. I think that was his inaugural hike.
Wow.
And he's just been a joy. He loves being on the trail. He knows when we're getting ready to go out, because he won't leave me alone. He's following me everywhere around the house, in the garage, getting gear ready and just excited to be going. But he's a great hiking dog, and he, like everyone else on the trail, you got to carry your own weight, right? So old Watts has got himself a harness and a pack. And of course, what we've got in there, first and foremost, is a dog emergency kit, meta kit for pups. I feel like that's a must.
Oh, okay.
They're pretty great, Ivan, because, they come with a booklet of instructions on what to do for certain things. And, I'm glad that I had it last spring, because I was in the Three Sisters Wilderness hiking Broken Top. I had Watts with me, and he wasn't just but under a year old yet, and he actually got heat stroke. I didn't know what was wrong with him. He started stumbling around like he was drunk, and I think it was just the reflection of the sunlight off of the snow, because there was still snow up there. But that book saved us. We had to pull it for a little bit and cool him down, but he ended up being all right. So we got the emergency kit. What else do we have in there, Watts? Food and water. Yeah, food and water. We got some of that. Some treats, right? We usually have a ball in there so we can play. We like to play campsite or fetch in a lake.
Nice.
Did I mention the booties already?
No. He's got hiking booties?
He's got hiking booties. If you're hiking in snow and they start to get ice balls in between their toes, those can kind of cut them. So it's good to protect them that way, and even on sheer rocks and things like that. So yeah, food, snacks, a ball, his booties, an emergency kit, and he's got his own little water bottle too. That's usually about it.
Nice.
Oh, and a raincoat.
Casey, for the med kit, is that something that you were able to find online, or did you have to go to a vet clinic?
No, you know who has them right next to the other dog gear stores like REI, and I think other sporting goods stores too will have them. Yeah, that's actually where I found the one for Watts.
And with 2023 already underway, Casey, what kind of hiking goals do you have for this year and maybe beyond this year?
My big shtick, like everyone else, right, is to do the PCT. That's on the list. Hopefully just a couple years down the road, because we all know that takes some planning. But in the immediate future, given like we've discussed, living in what seems to be the hiking hub of the U.S., I'm planning to tackle the PCT from the Three Sisters Wilderness all the way back to home here. I mean, I'll pretty much be able to hike right up to my front door. So that's the big one that's coming for the summer. That's going to take some coordination and planning as well, because that'll be about, for my estimates, 130 to 150 miles. So I'm going to have to see what kind of time I can bug old Mrs. Fool about being away from the house that long for, and try to fit all those miles into that allotted time. So that's my big one. But, we've got some other trips planned this summer. I want to go to the Black Hills, do a couple backpacking trips in there in South Dakota area. I think that might be another one of those underrated national parks or surrounding national forests that has a lot to offer. And then another one that I plan to do this summer is the Mount Hood Loop. That one's a 40-mile loop that goes around the base of Mount Hood. I can only imagine that's just an epic one.
Really? That would be a great hike.
Yeah, I think so too.
And it's only 40 miles?
40 miles, that's it. Get yourself all you want in a couple of days.
So some hikers, Casey, have a summit ritual or end of the hike routine. Maybe if it's a favorite snack or meal, possibly some trail beverages or even a moment of zen. Do you have a regular custom that you do when you reach your destination, or maybe when you make it back out?
My halfway treat to myself for a hiker, I guess a summit snack, is definitely the gummy bears. I don't know if you guys have seen my speeches on gummy bears, but that's my favorite go-to. But I have a rule, is I don't open them until I'm on the second half, the turnaround point or whatever. So when I get to the summit, it kind of depends on how I'm feeling and what kind of hike it's going to be. I'm not one that's not known to have a summit beer. That's one that I'll do every once in a while. But one thing that I always do is I just take a moment when I get up to a place like that and just breathe in the beautiful view and just give thanks to the great goodness that I'm up there, and just have that little moment to myself. And then we're popping gummy bears and having a good time on the way back.
I like that. And Casey, do you prefer regular gummy bears or sour gummy bears?
Regular gummy bears, for sure. I'm not a big sour guy, but regular gummy bears are where it's at.
And we talked about Watts's pack list, but when it comes to your pack list, what would you consider your most valuable piece of hiking gear? And then on the flip side, has there been a piece of hiking gear that you thought was going to be a game changer, but didn't live up to expectations?
Well, one thing that comes to mind right off the bat for some gear that is a life changer for the better, something I don't use very often, but when I need it is clutch money, and that's my glacier socks. So those are just backpacking hip waders. They're lightweight, like a polyester vinyl material, and they just slip right over your hiking boots and, all the way up your thigh. So instead of having to get your boots wet or trying to traverse across a log, you can just, simply cross a small stream or whatever. So the glacier socks have probably been the most bang for their buck, for sure. If you don't have a set, check out Wiggy's online, a company out of Colorado. Great purchase. And they're lightweight. I have them in my bag all the time, and I forget about them unless I need them.
Nice. Yeah, I'll add them to the episode note.
Yeah, so the glacier socks are where it's at. One thing I have to say, make sure you have a good pack that's functional and that fits right and is going to carry what you want to carry. That would be, my second thing. But a piece of hiking gear that's let me down or that hasn't lived at expectations, that one's kind of hard for me to say without putting some people on blast. You know what I mean? No one specific thing. The thing that I seem to have the most trouble with, Ivan, going south on me are my boots. I've finally gotten to a good pair of hiking boots, but, I've had a couple of pairs through some specific big name brands that just, they haven't cut the mustard and they've fallen apart after a trip or two.
No, that's a good point, Casey. It's really hard to find a boot that works for everyone because a boot that people swear by on their feet, might not be the same on your feet. And that's something that I'm going to have to approach this season, is investing maybe in a hiking boot, but then trail runners too. It seems like trail runners are becoming pretty popular options for hikers during the summer months, at least.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm taking are my boots and my AllTrails for sure. I like to have two pair when I'm out backpacking because you never know what's going to happen. So you're right though. This summer, I'd say that probably 70% of the people were wearing some sort of trail shoe.
You mentioned, the bear song and maybe hearing a growl potentially on the Desolation Wilderness. Have you had any close calls, whether it's getting turned around on a trail, maybe an unexpected wildlife encounter, maybe Mother Nature caught you by surprise, or just some strange run-ins with other individuals on the trail? Have you had any of those experiences?
Oh man, I had two in one trip. As a young man, mucking around in the Kenai Mountains, I got turned around and lost on a trail, and I ended up spending the night in some alder patches, surrounded by Devil's Club. And I don't know if you know what Devil's Clubs are, but they're called Devil's Club for a reason because they're terrible. It's a foliage with a big, star leaf on it. And it's got these little tiny pins that needles that will get into your skin if you touch it. So that was fun. I got lost. I spent the night out there, but I ended up making my way out of it because the trail system was just a loop. What, took me a while to get to it was just the terrain because it was just thick brush, nasty stuff to get through. I ended up being okay. But that same trip, actually, now that I think about it, there was a bear encounter. And I don't know, anybody that's ever been charged by a bear on here can tell you that you're going to be shaking in your boots because the adrenaline hits you real fast. But I had a bear come up to me. I was hiking alongside of the Russian River, which is pretty infamous for salmon fishing, and so it's big time bear country. And just hiking along, I saw two cubs on the bank that I was on, and it's not a very wide river. It's probably 30, 40 feet. And then the sow, the mama, was on the other side, and she came charging at me across that river, and I just about, my pants.
Oh, my goodness.
And, you're not supposed to run. So if anybody's out there and you see a bear, don't run. Just start making noise. She came running up to me, and she probably stopped 20 yards in front of me, and I'm shaking and quivering and staring at her. And she just started popping her jaws and jumping on her front feet. And, she did that a few times, and I was screaming and hollering, and she just took off, and her and the cubs ran into the woods. That's been about the most earth-shattering wildlife experience I've had thus far. I've been very fortunate, really, as much as I've been out and about. But that's why I've got old Watsy boy here, the great protector.
Yeah.
I do. I have to say, Watson and I came across a guy in the Desolation Wilderness that it was an odd encounter. I had never seen this before, Ivan. This individual, and I was like 20 miles into the trail, so we weren't near a trailhead at all. Or, if you're hiking this section of the trail, you've been out for a day or two, right? This dude was carrying a shovel. He had a full-blown backpack on, but instead of a trekking pole, he was carrying a full-size spaded shovel. And I'm coming up on this guy.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, why is this guy? Did he just bury a body or something? Why does he have a shovel with him? For crying out loud. Is he going to whack me with it? And the guy was the guy was friendly enough. We stopped and gave the old trail how you doing speech and whatever. But there was just something about that with the guy hiking with a shovel that kind of eked me out a little bit. Who knows? Maybe he was just some trail guy.
And it was a full size regular shovel that you would get at a hardware store?
Yeah. I was very surprised. I was like, man, this guy knows something I don't. Maybe it's the best hiking tool there is that we don't know about.
Oh, yeah, that would be a little weird to see that across the trail, especially out in the wilderness.
Yes, we politely kept scooting on down the trail.
And now, Casey, for people that are interested in getting into hiking in 2023, what advice would you give beginner hikers or people just starting off to make them have a safe, rewarding experience on the trails?
A safe and rewarding experience. I would say put yourself together a little emergency pack. And I'm not just talking about a medical kit, but, get yourself a little pack that's got a Cliff Bar in it, a little bit of food, an extra pair of socks, matches, the weatherproof matches, and a fire starter, and maybe a multi-tool, like a Leatherman or something like that, and put that together. I even think I have some moleskin in mind for your feet, in case you do get a blister. So just fit yourself a little kind of survival kit, make up your own, and you can always hit me up if you want some recommendations for what you need. Another thing I would tell somebody that's just getting started in hiking is, don't go out and spend a bunch of money. That's one great thing about hiking is, some of the equipment and some of the gear can be expensive, but that's only if you really want it to be, right? And depending on what you're doing. Yeah. But for someone that's just breaking out into it, don't go, all willy-nilly and buy the best and whatever gear that you can get your hands on, because you're going to want to test the waters on some stuff. So, you don't want to go spend $300 on a pair of hiking boots. I mean, you can always take them back. Yeah. I get that. But I'm just saying, you don't have to spend a bunch of money. You can get quality gear at a good price. Do some research and start out that way. Don't go for the biggest and fanciest right off the bat. Great tips
to know when you're first starting out, because if you go to REI, they do have a wide selection of stuff, but starting off maybe on the cheaper end, and then if you do enjoy it and want to upgrade, you can upgrade certain pieces rather than just going all in on the most expensive pieces you could find.
Yeah, just do a little bit of research, some reviews, and some self-awareness on what you might think works for you, and you'll be good to go.
Awesome. Great tips, Casey. Well, thank you, Casey, for answering some of those questions. This next section of the podcast is a little game of this or that questions that's all hiking related. I'm basically going to give you 2 hiking options, and you kind of just choose the one that you prefer out of the 2.
Okay.
Here we go. First one is ascending or descending?
I'm going to say ascending because, I don't like falling down, going downhill. It hurts.
And how about waterfalls or summits?
Summits all the way.
And switchbacks or straight up?
I'm going to go straight up, because like we were just saying, ascending's not my favorite, so I don't want to mess around with switching back. I'm going to hit it head on and bulldog that thing until I'm at the top where I need to be.
And how about trek poles or freehand?
Funny you should mention that, Ivan. I think I made a post about it a while ago, hiking Dog Mountain, but I used to make so much fun of people that use trekking poles. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Whatever. And then I got a set of trekking poles, and holy cow, it's a life changer. So I'm going to go with trekking poles. And if you're out there and you're making fun of people with trekking poles, don't knock it until you try it.
On hikes, do you fuel up before or after a hike?
I fuel up afterwards, I would say. I get so excited before I go out on a hike that I don't sleep and I don't really eat. It's kind of weird. That's oftentimes why I take off so early in the morning, because I'm just like the night before itching to get out and get going, right? So I kind of forget to eat. So, of course, by proxy, I guess afterwards you're just really hungry, right? So, I fuel up afterwards. I probably eat, like 10,000 calories in one sitting.
And do you bushwhack or go around?
I'm a bushwhacker sometimes. I like it just because if you are in a heavily populated or well-known area, you can kind of see something a little bit different. And, you get a little bit of that adrenaline kick too, right? You're like, oh man, there's no maintained trail here. So bushwhacking for sure.
And do you jump in or do you stay dry?
Jump in always, especially with little Watts. You got to get in there, especially if you're backpacking. You got to get some of that stink off you. So jump in all the way.
And Watts is a water dog. He likes being in the water.
Yeah, old Watts, he's a Labradoodle, so he's bred for the old water. He loves to get in the lake for sure.
And do you prefer sunsets or sunrises?
I'm going to say sunrises. Why I like the sunrises because you're watching the day begin, right? So you're seeing the sun come up. The overcasting views and shadows are just as beautiful as sunset, but then, of course, you got the rest of the day to enjoy it. So sunrise.
And how about spring flowers or fall colors?
Fall colors. I'm a big fall guy. guy. So fall colors for sure.
Nice. And when it comes to tagging on social media, do you tag or do you not tag?
Lately, I haven't been tagging. That's a 50-50 for me. I'm still kind of feeling my way through that, I guess.
Awesome. Well, that was it for the this or that questions, Casey, but I do have one follow-up question because I'm always interested in seeing what the meal preference is for folks before or after a hike. But what's your go-to meal after you've done an extensive hike?
Man, I'll tell you, any restaurant that is serving a good burger, some fries, and a brew, that's what I'm going for 98% of the time. Burger, fries, and a brew.
For folks that do want to follow you online, Casey, where are some of the places that they can find you?
Right now, it's just Instagram. I think that's going to be my sole focus. There seems to be a great community on that platform. And I'm sure there is on other ones too. But if you want to find me, that's where I'll be, is snapping selfies out in the wilderness and making videos and post them on Instagram. So,
and we'll make sure to add your handle to the episode notes, but it's at the Hiking Fool on Instagram, right?
Yeah, that's right. At the Hiking Fool. And I have to say, real quick, if I could, just thanks to everybody that does look through my silly content and finds it useful, and all the great comments and just making me a part of the hiking community on there. I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot, Instagram world.
Yeah, Casey, I'll say that the hiking community on Instagram has been really great and really supportive of everyone's adventures and what they do. It's one of those communities that you don't really see a lot of negativity amongst themselves. So it's been a positive experience, I think, for both of us coming on this platform and sharing our experiences.
Agreed.
Awesome, Casey. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. Really had a great time chatting with you, and I think the folks are going to really enjoy listening to this episode and hearing your hiking adventures. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Ivan, you're welcome, and thank you so much for having us. It's been an honor. Thanks, Ivan. We'll see you later. Now what?
Thank you once again to Casey for joining us on this episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. Be sure to follow him on Instagram at The Hiking Fool to keep up with their latest adventures. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. We'll be putting out new episodes every week through the fall and winter. Be sure to like and subscribe to not miss out on those. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Hikes and Mikes. Catch you on the next one. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Flip Socks. Whether you're on the trail, on the job, or in the yard, Flip Socks will keep Mother Nature out of your boots with their innovative nylon sleeve. You no longer need to worry about any annoying debris getting trapped in your boots during your hikes. Simply flip down the nylon sleeve over any boot to prevent Mother Nature from finding its way inside, keeping your feet comfortable all day long. To get your first pair, visit flipsocks.com and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for listeners who use the promo code at checkout, I'll be donating 100% of the Season 2 promo code proceeds to Big City Mountaineers, who provide transformative experiences through connections to nature that strengthen life skills and build community for youth and disinvested communities across the nation. So if you're tired of bits and pieces of the trail finding its way into your hiking boots, pick up a pair of Flip Socks today with the promo code HikesMikes10 to get 10% off. For website and promo code, see the episode description.